The death of God has paved the way for science, art, and unparalleled freedom. It is a gift.
To open the case for side opposition, I look to Mr. Fantin Lowenstein, Director of Communication, Exeter College.
I should have mentioned French as well. You should. Ignorance and docility. They are the preconditions of faith. Ignorance and docility are the very foundations upon which faith is built. This is what the proposition will ask you to mourn tonight. It is plain that the Almighty favors the meek and the mindless. As Descartes would put it, I do not understand, therefore I believe. But honorable members and esteemed guests, uttering these words, or worse, living by them, is surrendering the glorious gift of reason. For one to behave morally, because one is scared of a God preaching for paradise to come and wielding the specter of hell and judgments as tools of coercion, is in no way moral. To bound by the religious dogma who teaches us to be satisfied by not understanding and invokes miracles is naive and lazy at best. We shall not be bound by blind faith tonight. And it is in this spirit that in 1882, Nietzsche and his aphorism proclaimed in the 108th that God is taught, God is dead. Now I admit that there are some remote regions of the mind who still haven't received the memo. However, God is dead, and we all know it. And tonight, we gather at the crossroads of belief and doubt, at the very forefront of human thought, to debate a motion that reverberates through the annals of history. This statement by Nietzsche remained widely misunderstood to this day. Now, I think we can all agree that Nietzsche was not making a clinical observation when he wrote these words. No, in what was really a prophecy, Nietzsche anticipated the decline of religion and the grasp it had on society. He perceived the erosion of religious values. He perceived that the rules who governed men for the last 1800 years were crumbling down. He saw this as a window of opportunity for men to establish new values, for men to rise with wit, with courage, and to propel humanity forward. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join me in that view. But before I delve into my arguments, I would like to extend my congratulations to the President and to every member on committee for putting together such a fantastic term card. I am sure that all members gathered here tonight will agree with me when I say you have done a remarkable job. I would also like to thank the President for the opportunity to speak tonight in this august chamber on a motion that goes to the very roots of the Oxford Union, who was precisely founded 201 years ago under the duress of power and faith, who did not intend to be questioned and forbade Oxford students to discuss such matters. I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, our predecessors did not regret the death of God. If anything, they welcomed it. And I urge you to make them proud tonight and to further their glorious legacy. But now, it is my duty, and indeed my honor, to introduce the speaker for the proposition tonight. You have just heard from Sarah Bessef, a postgraduate student who reads criminology at Exeter College and serves as the director of press in the Oxford Union. Now I must say, I am not the least bit surprised to find Sarah on that side of the house tonight. Poor Sarah, deprived of her omniscient imaginary friend, often resorts to psychics for glimpses into the future. Tragically, even with their mystical insight, none of them could foresee her misplacing her credit card just a day before embarking on a months-long trip to the United States. Divine justice? Perhaps. But what's truly astonishing is that Sarah is here at all tonight. This is a woman who once looked me dead in the eye and declared with great conviction that she finds Oxford boring. A place so beneath her that when the harrowing need for a mani-pedi arises, she must flee to London because, as she puts it, the salons here are filthy and full of students. On a serious note, though, despite her theatrical disdain for Oxford and her various existential crises, Sarah is one of the most competent and hardworking members of the union, and it's a great pleasure to serve alongside her, though I do hope she finds tonight's debate at least slightly more tolerable than her Oxford experience so far. Our next speaker is Dr. Yasir Qadhi, a distinguished Islamic scholar and theologian. Though fun fact about Dr. Qadhi, he actually started out studying chemical engineering before deciding that explaining the mysteries of God was somehow less complicated than thermodynamics. And yet, here he is tonight, debating the death of God, a man who once studied how to create chemical reaction, now spends his time diffusing theological explosion on the internet, where he holds a very prominent YouTube channel. Whether in the lab or the lecture hall, one thing remains constant: he's still dealing with volatile reactions. Up next is Professor Beatrix Himmelmann, a renowned philosopher whose work delves into ethics, metaphysics, and the great questions of existence. Though, let's be honest, she probably spends half of her time explaining to undergraduate students that no, Nietzsche was not in fact telling you to be a horrible person. She literally wrote a book called On Meaning in Life, which makes you wonder, if she had actually found it, would she really be here tonight debating something this existential? And last, we will hear from Dr. Philip Goff, a professor at the University of Durham. You know, this lesser version of Oxford. Professor Goff is best known for his work on consciousness and panpsychism. That is the idea that everything might have some form of consciousness, which means that if he's right, even the table of the Honorable Secretary may have some form of opinion about the debate tonight. He describes himself as a Christian, but he admits that he's only close to 50% sure that his version of Christianity is true. Now, if that's the level of conviction he brings to his own beliefs, I can only imagine how persuasive he'll be for side proposition tonight. Frankly, it is a blessing, pun intended, to have him on the other side of the house doing half of our job for us. Mr. Speakers, Mr. President, these are your speakers, and they are most welcome. The proclamation of the death of God was not an end, but a beginning. For Nietzsche, this was not merely an observation of absence. It was a clarion call to celebrate existence, life, the profusion of energy through matter. He understood the twofold duality inherited from Plato, who taught that the world of forms is the truer reality. How utterly misguided. We must not sacrifice our fleeting joys for the promises of shadowy eternity. Indeed, religion has often served as a tool of domination, a suffocating blanket draped over humanity's potential. How many have stifled their ambitions, deemed their aspirations, all in the name of a God who demands subservience? Let us remember the haunting words of St. Paul: all powers comes from God. It is no coincidence that the most devout society remained the least democratic. Under the cloak of theocracy, opposition falters, debate is silenced, and freedom, that is but a whispered hope. For example, the very word Islam translates to submission. For too long, humanity languished in a cycle of stagnation, shackled by dogma and fear. Since Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God, we have witnessed breathtaking advancements, planes soaring through azure sky, rockets piercing the very fabric of space, a decline in child mortality rates, and medical miracles beyond imagination. Or to quote the infamous emeritus New College professor Richard Dawkins, if you base medicine on science, you cure people. If you base the design of planes on science, they fly. If you base the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works, bitches.
On information.
Yes.
Are you suggesting that all Muslims are prone to authoritarianism?
No, I'm suggesting that by definition, they are prone to submit to God. That's merely all I'm saying. So, I'll continue. Nietzsche wrote, "Man is something to be overcome, not through submission, not through blind faith, but through our unwavering will to create, to celebrate life fearlessly and without constraint." And yet, in defiance of reason, even in our modern age, a handful of nations cling to the scriptures, which remain their principal source of law. Nations like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Afghanistan, Sudan, Mauritania, Pakistan, Brunei, Yemen, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. But let us take a moment, let us scrutinize the fruit of their adherence. A mere 3 Nobel Prizes shared among them, and only one when excluding the Peace Prize. Do they have a space program? A resounding no. None of these nations finds itself within the upper echelons of press freedom, any human rights index, nor do they lead in education, healthcare, or life expectancy. Is this the divinity whose demise should elicit our grief? I would like to also make the point that throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, each with their gods. From Jupiter to Odin, each pantheon once ruled the hearts of their people, yet with the passage of time, they too were forgotten. Why should we presume our modern gods will withstand the test of time? Why should we trust in a deity that offers salvation when the Titan of old failed us? Now, the proposition will implore you to shed tears for an ideological chain that has bound mankind in fear, stifled reason, and waged war upon our potential. They lament the passing of a God who demanded obedience over thought, submission over strength, suffering over joy. But we shall not submit. The death of God has paved the way for science, art, and unparalleled freedom. It is a gift to chart our course not by divine whim, but by the indomitable force of human reason. I believe that the death of God is not a lament, but a triumph. The death of God is the birth of man, and in that death we are free. Thank you.